Three, two, one. Hello, guys. Welcome to a quick interview with Eisenherz MTG. I'm Eric, and if you've been living under a rock, you may be wondering, who the heck is Eisenherz? Dude, give me the elevator pitch. If someone has never met you, never heard of you, they've been interested in cEDH, so they watched a playing with power video, and then this gets autoplayed next. Who the heck are you?
Well, my name is Engin. Most people know me as Eisenherz. I'm a cEDH player, content creator, brewer, coach from Germany. I've been active, like very active in this scene for the last 5 or 6 years or so. I honestly I forgot. It's been such a long time. And I'm kind of like involved in a lot of things, but yeah, mostly it's like playing, grinding tournaments, coaching people, brewing stuff, and like being active on Discord and just engaging with the community in all its facets.
Heck yeah. Well, but before I forget, I'm going to go ahead and throw this up. If people want to check out your YouTube channel, which has some fascinating videos that we're going to talk about a little bit later on, if they want to hit up your Patreon, I know you mentioned you some coaching, or I think one of the things you're more famously known for, and we're going to talk a little bit here, is you're very connected to the Urza community. I know we were talking about it before we started recording. You've got it on your, we can see it in the background right next to your biology textbook. If they want to hit up the Urza Discord, which is super well managed, fantastic mod team over there. All that is available at the QR code below. But what we can do real quick, let me do a little bit of scene magic here, is we can come over, and something I would love to hear you talk about a little bit is your Urza Power Scepter list. Another thing we were chatting about before we started is that you were like one of the early adopters for Moxfield, and this list has been around, even longer than basically like the gold standard for how we keep track of deck lists. So this is like an oldie but a goldie. It's very popular. I know I've played against this list a couple times. I've never played it, but first let's start with, like, did you just emerge out of your cEDH womb and you're like, okay, I've never played any Magic before, I'm going to play this list, and then nothing else? Or how did you start playing Magic? How did you put this list together? Like, give me the deets, dude. I want to hear.
Okay, so get ready because I like to hear myself talk, right? So this it all started like a while back. I played Magic as a teen in what you guys from the US would call middle school.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to play like Type 2 tournaments, right? So what's basically standard now. And I was like decent, but I was still young, so I had like no idea of like the meta in general. I just brewed whatever I liked. Eventually, I got into tournaments, so I started building more tournament-specific decks. I remember that one of the first tournament decks I had was Affinity from Mirrodin back in the day, so quite a while back. And then everything got banned, and I got really sad. Yada yada. I continued playing MTG until I think the end of the Ravnica block.
Okay.
And then I think the next thing that came along was Cold Snap or something like that.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, something like that. And that's when I stopped playing MTG because I got more interested in like teenage stuff, right? So, and then I completely stopped playing MTG. I just sold all of my cards. All I kept was my Pauper Affinity deck, which back in the day I didn't even know that Pauper existed. I just built a deck with like artifacts and just commons. And when I was done with university and doing my internship as a teacher, I randomly got like YouTube recommendations for MTG, and I started watching again, right? And I went to the basement. I searched for that deck box that I kept, right? And I found it was an Affinity deck, and I understood that there is a format called Pauper. So I used that deck as a template, and I started playing Pauper again. Like, that was really fast from watching those recommendations to going to the LGS again and playing Pauper again competitively, right? It just took like 2 or 3 weeks. Then I was grinding Pauper, and then I noticed that people were playing another format that I've never seen before. It was like 4 players, and they had like this special cards in a special zone. And I asked about that, and I then understood that Commander is the new thing, right? I had never heard of it. And I'm like competitive in nature, right? So I can't play casual. That's just not how I play. So I started building a Memnard deck because, as you remember, Affinity was my
Whoa.
first competitive deck. So I started building Memnard, and just a few weeks, maybe like let's say 1 or 2 months later, Modern Horizons was spoiled, and Urza was released as a legendary card.
Hmm.
And I'm also like a lore aficionado, so
Oh, no way.
I was immediately interested in playing that card as a commander, but I had no idea of how to play and brew competitively.
Hmm.
And it didn't take a long time for Shaper and some other guys from the Laboratory Maniacs to release an Urza list with a primer. And I
Hmm.
started reading that, but I didn't understand shit. So what I did was I started playing that deck and writing everything down that I didn't understand, trying to explain it
Hmm.
to myself, and that like just uh, connects with what I do for a living, right? I'm a teacher, so I tried to basically teach it to myself, and I started writing everything down, and
Hmm.
those notes became like a 32-page Excel document, no, not Excel, Word document,
Yeah.
and I eventually just released that as a primer. And yeah, things just went from there, right? I got introduced to Discord, and I became a mod on the Discord. Now I'm an admin. I with some other people, some great people, I run that Urza community Discord server. Yeah, and I've been playing Urza ever since. Like I've played a bunch of other decks, a lot of other decks actually, but I eventually always came back to Urza because I love the character in MTG. I love how the
Hmm.
deck plays. I love that it's not an S tier deck, quote unquote, right? I love the right fighting uphill, right?
Yeah.
Against the odds, right? That I'm just every win I get with Urza feels like something feels like a bigger accomplishment for me because I've been brewing that deck for years. I've been maintaining that deck for years. I've been adapting that deck for years, and I know that it's not a top tier meta deck just because of the color pie and the color identity and stuff. But every rep and every win just feels so good for me. So I just keep playing that deck and grinding it as much as I can.
Heck yeah. So before we go into a more in-depth overview of kind of the list and something that sounds like you've really put a lot of time and like you said, like reps into, let's imagine someone who, they've been playing cEDH for 3 or 4 months. They heard, that like Blue Farm or Kinnan is the best list to play. So, one of their friends let them borrow like their proxied up list and they played it and sure it got to do some really cool stuff, but I don't know, they're not that interested in playing. And so, one of their friends say, well, sometimes people instead of playing like these like S tier meta decks, like basically just a blue farm, maybe you play like Zerda, or maybe you play like Grace the the Tide, or there's this Urza list that this guy's been playing for a long time and really enjoyed. What would you say to that person of like, here's why I think you should play Urza and why it might be the list for you, or why you might say, maybe you need to give Blue Farm another shot.
Okay, so I've talked about this with some friends from Germany as well. For me personally, I think something that we never have to like lose track of is the fact that we're still playing a game. And when playing a game, the thing that should be the most important is that you enjoy what you're doing.
Hmm.
And if you're not enjoying playing a specific deck, then maybe it's not the right thing to do. You could be doing something other than MTG competitively, right? You're playing a game. So for me personally, fun is of like it's the most important thing. Of course, I play cEDH because I want to win, but if I don't enjoy playing the deck, then that's not for me. I've
Hmm.
played Blue Farm, I've played it successfully, I've top 4 tournaments, but I didn't enjoy it, so I stopped playing it, right?
Hmm.
And so that would be the first advice I would give anyone. You should enjoy the game. And then why specifically Urza? Okay, there's some things. First of all, it's always an uphill battle.
Hmm.
And if you enjoy that, if you like the challenge, then that deck is for you.
Hmm.
Um, Another thing that we always like to say is everything is a mock sapphire in this deck. So
Hmm.
if you like those crazy huge board states with like where every treasure token, every clue token, every artifact you have can be tapped for mana, and you can take like so many different game actions, then the deck is for you.
Hmm.
Also, if you enjoy like artifact centric decks, obviously the deck is for you. If you like combo decks, the deck might be the right thing for you. If
Hmm.
you like those things where you don't have like these hard win cons like Oracle, then Urza might be the thing for you. It's not super convoluted, but it's just not as straightforward as
Hmm.
other decks would be, and it's just something that keeps me interested in the deck, or has kept me interested in the deck for all these years now.
Hmm. Yeah, I can definitely see
Yeah, one
what with
thing.
that. Oh, okay.
Sorry,
Go,
sorry,
go,
sorry.
go.
I was just thinking, when you would not like the deck, maybe if you like turbo strategies, maybe that's not the thing for you. If you're
Ooh,
like
that's a good
really
point.
into like Roxai or Rock Tevesh or whatever, Mardu list, Dihada or something, maybe then Urza's not the deck for you because it does need some setup, and it lacks some crucial cards like the unconditional tutors. Um, Maybe if you, I don't know, uh, yeah, if you really like graveyard centric strategies, then Urza is definitely not for you because Mono Blue has basically zero graveyard interaction other than graveyard hate.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and if you like those super high card quality, top tier meta decks, then maybe Urza is also not for you.
Hmm. Yeah, that is very reasonable. Sometimes a tool that I'll use when I'm coaching is we can imagine like cards in cEDH kind of on like a four-axis spectrum, and we have kind of like combo potential versus like overall quality. For instance, like Thassa's Oracle has incredible combo potential. But outside of its ability to be comboed with Tainted Pact and Thassa's Oracle, it really doesn't do much. Versus a
Yeah.
card like Smothering Tithe, it both has combo quality with things like Fairy Mastermind, where it becomes a win con, versus like I don't know if you're ever gonna be mad about like drawing a Smothering Tithe off of like a Risk Study
Yeah.
card. And
Yeah.
then another thing that we have is kind of like synergy that we can kind of introduce into that, where even though and then the fourth axis would be quality. So for instance, like Soul Ring, it is hard to get a higher quality card than like Soul Ring, but it doesn't always like synergize super well. Because if you're playing like a Elevere list where you're playing a lot of like null rod effects, you're really trying to avoid casting like any non-creature spells or things like that because you're trying to like avoid giving as many fish draws as possible. We can then start to like map these like cards along like this axis, and everything brings something unique to the table. And so something I'm hearing you saying is that while we do take a little bit of a dip in card quality because you can only keep the card quality so high when you're trapped into a specific color pile,
Yeah.
the level of like synergy combined with combo potential means that there's a high likelihood that not only are things going to be good in the early phase when you're just trying to set up your board state and you're just trying to have something on the board because your opponent just played a Necropotence and its Tormod's Crypt is all you have to stop their breach line. You also get to treat everything as this kind of like mana rock because of Urza's static ability, or is it triggered?
It's a static ability. It just says that you can tap artifacts to produce blue mana through Urza, which is a good thing to know because it's not stopped by Null Rod.
Heck yeah. So then you're also like I don't know, you get access to so many things you usually don't see in blue, so it's really cool to see it. But also like you said, if you're a Dahada player, and Dahada players I'm talking to you right now, and you've been thinking Dahada's felt like a little rough, I want to play something that's a little bit different. Urza's gonna be a lot different.
Yeah, it's basically the exact opposite. We don't do turbo stuff. We don't do graveyard stuff. Um, but I have to add here that I play a very specific kind of Urza deck list that I've been working on for quite a while. There
Mhm.
are, of course, other kinds of Urza deck lists. So I just want everyone to be aware that like the list that I'm playing, it's performing really well. But there are other Urza pilots that have other lists that also perform very well for them. Some are more proactive. I wouldn't say outright turbo, but more proactive and layered combo. Some are more control-y with still on some of the control and stacks pieces. And then there's, of course, the classic polymorph list.
Mhm.
But I'm currently on a very, very mid-range, grindy list that is just performing so well right now. I'm like so happy with how I'm able to pilot Urza at the moment, and my results just more or less speak for themselves.
Yeah, no, that's the. I was looking around your Discord earlier, and I saw that in the decklist channel there was a Urza Storm list that I think had like 4,000 comments on it. So I think I love that. Even with a commander that, theoretically has like such a clear game plan of like, oh, you just play artifacts and then you use those artifacts to win. You know,
Mm,
how difficult could it be? But it opens up this whole like Pandora's box of like it's almost like the world's your oyster. But
yeah.
this particular oyster is something like you said that you've handcrafted. So we've got your Urza's Power Scepter list. We've got your Polykraken list as well. But we were talking about it earlier, and you were saying that the kind of polymorph stuff you have found isn't as tournament valuable as you would like. And while it's still
Yeah.
popular, it's maybe not as, just like you said, you're a very competitive guy. You're in it to win it. And so you found that this kind of like more mid-range grindy list has been where you found a lot of success. So
Yeah.
let's just kind of like start looking through it. One thing that already stands out to me is I see that in the Planeswalkers, and then we'll just work our way down. So if there's cards that we're going to
Mhm.
get to later that become relevant, just let me know and I'll scroll to them. You've got Tezzeret the Seeker, which makes sense because they find artifacts.
Mhm.
I not seeing a Tezzeret Cruel Captain though.
That is correct.
Talk to me about that.
Okay. So, planeswalkers for me are like in a very weird spot when it comes to card quality. So, first of all, they're non-creature spells, which makes them kind of fragile on the stack. They're more easily interacted with than creature spells, right? Um, but then usually you'd say a creature is more fragile on the board because it can die to damage. Well, that's also true for a planeswalker.
Oh
It
yeah.
can very easily die to damage. So, in my opinion, a planeswalker is both weak on the stack and weak on the board. So, what I want from a planeswalker when I play it is either it has to have an immediate, impactful effect with one of its abilities, which Tezzeret the Seeker does. If it resolves and I get to tutor, I will always get something that's worth the investment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm very rarely using the untap ability unless I already have a One Ring in play, and I'm also very rarely using the ultimate.
Mm-hmm.
But it happened, but it's not like the main idea. So when I use Planeswalker, I want them to have an immediate impact, or I want them to have a static ability that is so good that it's like worth the investment, and I can basically like protect that planeswalker for long enough for that static ability to matter and have a decent
Mm.
impact on the game. Which is, for example, true with Teferi because it's a silence effect, right? And then usually you just win. Tezzeret, the Cruel Captain, the new one, is a good card, and I play it in, or I slotted it into the Polykraken list because that has just more open slots. I've tried it in the Power Scepter version. I didn't like it because it just didn't do what I wanted to do. So you tutor up 1 drops or 0 drops, which is fine, but usually those just mana rocks, except for maybe if you get like a Grafdigger's Cage.
Hmm.
Then you also have to cast those artifacts, which I also kind of don't like because the Heuristic Study is the name of the game currently.
Yeah.
So whenever you tutor up something, you also have to pay for it and get potentially feed someone's Heuristic Study, which is something I
Yeah.
try to avoid because I make a lot of mana. I don't have to really feed it when I don't want to. The ultimate ability, in my opinion, is irrelevant for the game unless you're already winning. Um, and then there's the untap ability, which is nice. I like that because it synergizes well with like Basalt, Grim, Mana Vault, and the One Ring. But overall, I just found that the cards I decided to cut while testing Tezzeret Cruel Captain performed better more consistently. And
Mm.
those were my enchantment, theft, and clone effects. Overall, they were just much better in more games. Not to
Mm.
say that Tezzeret is bad per se, but it just doesn't do what I wanted to do in this specific list. I know that
Mm.
other people in more proactive layered combo lists play it and they play it successfully, but those lists differ in like 30 cards from what I'm playing right now.
Mm.
And it also makes more sense in those lists because they have much more artifacts, more disruptive artifacts. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the when I was looking through Moxfield just to see what some of the other big lists were. The second most popular, the two most popular lists are yours. And then the third most popular one I think was 38 cards different than yours. So kind of going back
Yeah,
to that theme of like, even though we're in one color, there's way more than one ways to play
for
Urza
sure,
or
for
High
sure.
Artificer. Especially because you talked about, we kind of get this Mock Sapphire effect, but also at the end of the day, you're really just trying to find some way of generating infinite colorless mana to then play through your
Yeah.
list, right? Do you find that utilizing Urza's activated ability here at the bottom is the most consistent and easiest to get to win line for Urza? Do you feel like that's kind of like always what you're focused on?
Well, so it's I'm not using that ability as a value engine, right? That a lot of people just assume that you do that because you can, but you don't. Because right, when you have 5 mana open and you activate this, you have a 5 mana investment, which could potentially be just a land. So you pay 5 mana to get a land, and it potentially could also just be a counterspell that you can't use, and that's now gone, right?
Hmm.
This activating Urza for value is a last-ditch effort. You only ever do that when you really have nothing else you can do, and you're also able to keep mana open and at least to bluff interaction, even if you don't have any.
Hmm.
So Urza's ability for me is just purely an outlet. It's the outlet for the infinite mana combos that I play, and yeah, that's been working well. I've for tournaments specifically included other outlets like Walking Ballista before, but I've not had that come up and be relevant. In fact, it is possible to win in other ways. You don't always need Urza. For example, if you win with Hullbreaker Horror, or if you use like a combo of what's it called? The Battered Golem and Valley Flood Color and the Banishing Neck Retraction Helix lines,
Ooh.
because those allow you to make infinite mana without Urza, and then you can use an outlet such as Codex Shredder to just mill your opponents out. And you can
Hmm.
mill yourself out, then you can recur whatever you need from your graveyard and then still win the game.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that is an element of like versatility that's really, really important. Because even
Yeah.
though I feel like Drannith is not nearly as prevalent as it was in cEDH of yesteryear, you're gonna end up in situations where either there's a Drannith out, or potentially the only flash enabler you have is your Valley Flood Caller, and you need to be able to get there without like casting creatures because there's a Thassa's Oracle on the stack right now,
Yeah.
and so I think it's always really, really good to kind of have like backup lines. Um, would you say that kind of generating infinite mana and then pumping it into Urza's is the most common one though?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
So this list has gone through a lot of like development, right? It used to be a combo control list back in the day. Everyone knows these cards: Winter Orb, Static Orb, Trinisphere, Back to Basics, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's way back in the day, and it's just that stuff is not tournament viable just because of time limits, right?
Mm-hmm.
Also,
Yeah.
Stacks is
No. No.
just
No
kind of
back to
dead.
basics here. Yeah. Yeah.
You're
Stacks.
more
Stacks
often than
was.
not you're just king making someone. So I've decided to cut all of that with the printing of Forensic Gadgeteer and went into a like very layered combo deck, which had like what's it called, the reality chip and Sensei's divining stops,
Hmm.
Sensei's divining top, stuff like that. And the interlocking combos that the deck had were like so layered that I couldn't even like show them all of them in like a picture. It's just too much, too many combos, right?
Yeah. Game
Um,
time territory. Yeah.
yeah, we try to make like a chart of it, but it's just too many. We had to reduce it down. But eventually, I noticed when I was playing that super layered combo version that I had like bad mulligans because I had like some disjointed combo pieces. I would have one piece of one
Hmm.
combo, one piece of the other combo, but I would still lack one of the things, and that would lead to bad mulligans. So what I decided to do is I decided to cut down on the combos that I wouldn't use as often, and it just happened to be the infinite draw combos. So those were the combos with like Reality Chip and Sensei's Divining Top.
Hmm.
So I decided to cut those and try to increase my card quality, and especially when I'm talking card quality, for me in Urza, the card quality kind of was like card draw engines. I need more
Hmm.
card draw engines, so I included stuff like Steel Enchantment, Copy Enchantment, and Mirror Mate.
Hmm.
I'm also, of course, on the One Ring, which is just crazy in Urza. It's a good
Oh,
card
I
in general,
bet.
but in Urza, it's just so good. I'd say so much better than most other decks. I've included what's it called? Consecrated Sphinx, Fairy Mastermind, Polywog Prodigy. All of these give me more consistent mulligans because I have a density of card draw engines that allow me to like keep better hands, deploy card draw engines, at least one or maybe two, and just go from there. By doing that, I'm not as reliant on having Urza on the board. My main objective is to ramp into a card draw engine. Then I will generate value through that, and I will eventually cast Urza. I don't have to ramp into an Urza early on. That's the main idea right now. It makes me less dependent of Urza in general. Of course, he's still my main outlet, but I reduced the draw combos and I just kept what I think are the highest card quality infinite mana combos. And yeah, you can debate about like what is high card quality, but the quality also has to be seen in the context of the deck, right? Something that would be bad in another deck is just crazy good in Urza. Like very few decks play Ether Spellbomb. In Urza, it's just so good.
Yeah. I would love to hear you talk a little bit more about Polywog Prodigy because I think that Fairy Mastermind, Consecrated Sphinx, these are
Yeah,
part and parcel with the cEDH format. And if you look
yeah,
at any of the most popular lists, you are probably going to see one or the other. Like I think most blue farm lists on this point are on Fairy Mastermind, which is kind of the like a good litmus test for like how popular a card is. For instance, like Stormkiln Artist is kind of like making its way back in the blue farm list. Polywog Prodigy, I think, is a great example of it is like the 101st of 101st cards, and people
yeah.
often like find themselves cutting it. What is a
I mean, there's
reason that to Urza pilots you may be like, look, I know that you cut it from Kinnan and I know you cut it from Rockthras, but you need to keep Polywog Prodigy in Urza. What's your argument for that?
so this is not like a hill I will. You say that a hill I would die on.
Yeah.
Um, the card in Urza just works well, and it increases the density of cheap card draw engines that you can deploy early on to like fuel your hand, and then eventually put all of those zero drops into play and have like Mock Sapphires on the board and outvalue your opponents. The thing with Polywog Prodigy is that I know that a lot of people on the Urza Discord are like have like mixed feelings about it. It's been working so well for me because I've been consistently able to trigger it at least once or twice with the Evolve trigger, so that I just have a very solid card draw engine in play. If you have a Polywog Prodigy in play turn 1 or turn 2, and you can follow up with a Urza as early as like turn 2, turn 3, you're usually evolving it twice just through the Urza cast, because Urza triggers it once, having a higher toughness, and then if your construct is at least a 3/3, the construct will also trigger it. So you get double Polywog
Whoa.
triggers just by casting Urza, and immediately you have
That's
just a very, very
fascinating.
strong card draw engine.
That's really cool. Okay, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Another card that kind of stands out to me, and this stands out to me because my first cEDH list actually was also mono blue, but it was Orvar. Um, so that's where I recognize this from. But aside from that, I feel like Energy Tap isn't a card that you tend to see a lot. And so you talked about trying to maintain really high like card quality, and I can see why Hydroelectric Specimen and Spellskite and Metamorph make their way in. But how is it that Energy Tap kind of earns its spot?
Okay, Energy Tap. So we don't have Dark Ritual, right? If we had, we would play it. Um, but this, for the most part, is pay 1 blue, make 4 colorless. You cast
Hmm.
this post Urza, and so that like the way it works in Urza is just so neat. You cast Urza, you get a construct token, right? Even if you're tapped out, you will have 1 mana available. You tap that
Oh.
construct token for a blue, you tap Urza for 4 colorless through Energy Tap, and then you can immediately follow up with a One Ring or Unwinding Clock or whatever other artifacts you might have in your hand, right? That's just super
Whoa.
neat. Also, um, I'm
That's
on
cool.
Consecrated Sphinx right now. I'm also on like Hullbreaker Horror without Polymorph, so this helps me get those cards out earlier. I've also used Energy Tap on my at instant speed when I had like one of my Flash Enablers in play to just set up a game-winning turn. I
Hmm.
mean, I've tapped it with Consecrated Sphinx and made 6 colorless mana, and that's just an absurdly good rate. I mean, obviously it's not Dark Ritual, right? There's no debate about that, but it
Hmm.
is putting in a lot of work in Urza. And my most thought after interaction is like when I get Urza out, tap the construct, put cast energy tap, tap Urza, and get One Ring into play. And I'm just very well set up. So if I'm able to like ramp into Urza One Ring, I'm very, very well set up to like grind out this game and go for a win on like turn 5 or so.
That's really cool. That is not an interaction I would have thought of, but that's so cool. Yeah, I think I also like that you have like a relatively small sorcery package, because I know that you could go up on things, you know, like Merchant Scroll or some of these other cards that I think you'll see people jumping into if they're in like mono blue. But I think if we go down to your like instance list here, this with the exception of potentially Scour for Scrap, you know, this could be any like 3 or 4 card, 3 or 4 color like shell instant package, with the exception of, you know, we're not seeing any of like the black universal tutors,
Yeah,
you know, and you know we don't have like Pyroblast or Red Elemental Blast or
yeah,
you know Worldly Tutor. But as far as like, you know, card for card, these are so many of the blue instant spells that you, I feel like, are going to want to see in almost any list. Something I would be super curious to hear about is, so you talked about how this list tends to lean a little bit more mid range. Do you find that both the fact that you're in mono blue, so people know, like, surely they've got to be on some counter spells, and the fact that you're trying to draw the game out, you know, stop that, you know, if a Necrodominance hits, you're probably going to be throwing a counter spell its way. Do you feel like
yeah.
as a pilot you get kind of trapped in these like you know, like table police situations?
Okay, so I'm known for being a mad sandbagger. So, I just okay. So the people that know me know that I sandbag like like I don't want to use any slurs, right? But like a mofo, right? Um, I don't interact if I don't absolutely have to, and I don't let others pressure me into it. I'm not playing table police. I used to play control. I used to play stacks. I used to be put into those positions where I would spend my resources. I made videos about that, explaining how to sandbag, explaining how to value each and every one of your interaction spells. You need to draw out 3 of your opponent's cards for one of your interaction spells to pull enough value. So I don't interact. Oop,
Well,
your stream got paused.
oh, can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Okay. Can you see it still?
Yes, now I can see you again. Now
Okay.
it's
Okay.
paused again.
Okay. Sorry. That's the a satellite must have tilted one way so that someone could, you know, torrent Game of Thrones or something. Okay. Sorry. We're talking about the instant package. You were talking about. I used to play table police. I used to play stacks, but now,
Yeah, that's
unless it says win the game, not
I'm
countering it,
like
baby. Not
yeah.
this guy. Not this as a player.
I'm over that. Like I'm not countering stuff if I don't absolutely have to. And I'll be vocal, right? I'll talk to the pod. I'm not like the craziest yapper because I don't want to be annoying and I hate when people do that. But I will make my opponents, or at least try to make my opponents also do their thing. They can't rely on me policing the table. I'm not playing a control list. I'm playing a grindy mid-range list. Obviously, I do have interaction. I have maybe a little bit more than other decks, but I do not use that to be forced into the table police situation. For example, so my interaction suite, I don't know how you pronounce that, is tuned in a way that it helps me protect my winning lines first, right? Um, Interacting and stopping my opponents is just a second thing I think about. One example would be I play Miscast over Spell Pierce, right? I'd rather have a counterspell that is a bit more narrow, like Miscast, but it is a harder counterspell because your opponents have to pay 3 mana, right? Whereas Spell Pierce would be a wider counterspell, but it's softer because the opponents have to only pay 2 mana. So Miscast will not interact with a Necrodominance. Spell Pierce will, but Miscast will be much more helpful when I'm trying to interact to protect my own win. So that's why I make that choice. I'm also on Dispel. Dispel doesn't stop Underworld Breach, but it helps me protect my winning lines from interaction. So that's why I play Dispel.
That makes sense. And Force of Negation stops Underworld
Yeah,
Breach, but then they come at you with like a Pyroblast, and you're like, not today.
yeah.
Something I would love to hear
So
about.
that's the choices. I can.
Oh,
There's one thing I'd like to also go over.
oh yeah, I'd love to
Um,
hear it.
the If you look at the instances, you will see that although I advocate for playing board wipes, at least one in the deck, I don't play Cyclonic Rift.
Yeah.
I've opted to cut Cyclonic Rift as well as March of Swirling Mist from my deck list, although they're like pretty good cards. And in Urza, you're absolutely able to overload Rift consistently, but it just also draws so much hate. What I did instead, I cut those cards for Banishing Neck and Retraction Helix.
Hmm.
Those are, at the worst, they are spot removal, soft spot removal, so bounce spells. I can also put them on my opponent's creatures and force them to tap something,
Mm-hmm.
just to interact with another opponent. But first and foremost, they're also combo pieces. So I've decided to cut back on the control-y aspect of what my deck is able to do, to have more combo potential with cards that I'm already on anyway, which are Battered Golem and Valley Floodcaller.
Hmm.
So that's like one of the decisions that also shows like the deck is not meant to be played as a control deck. It is a very grindy
Hmm.
deck list with a decent combo potential. And with the sorcery spells, as you saw, I cut most of the, I'd say, mediocre tutor spells that you have in Mono Blue,
Mm-hmm.
Solve the Equation, Merchant Scroll, and even Reshape,
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
I much more focus on generating card advantage through draw engines than
Hmm.
to like tutor specific pieces. I used to do that. I would tutor specific hate pieces, but I don't do that anymore. I try to draw as many cards as possible, and usually I'm able to present a win from there because I kind of find the pieces, or I storm through my deck and then find the pieces.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really, really fascinating to me because something that things, for instance, like Solve the Equation offer is specificity. You can get exactly what you want. And then something that board wipes offer is in your video about board wipes, you talk about how
Mhm.
one of the reasons we see them more in casual is just because of their like kind of like generic goodness of even
Mhm.
decks like that are really, really super duper spell slingery. They're still going to have a Valley Flood Caller, right? They may even still have like an Esper Sentinel or something like that. That even though you may be hitting like the Kinnan player a little bit more than the Rockside player, odds are you're still going to be taking a little bit of something from everybody. So you've got this
Yeah.
balance of specificness with your tutors, and then you go general with your interaction suite.
Yeah.
However, it seems as you've almost inverted that, where with your interaction suite, you've chosen to be really, really specific with banishing knack and retraction helix. They are going to
Yeah.
bounce significantly less than an overloaded Psych Rift is, but there's almost always going to be at least one creature you can hit with it, and then
Mhm.
they can bounce the Smothering Tithe or the Kinnan in response to the Basalt Monolith or the Fairy Mastermind.
Exactly.
And then when it comes to your own cards, you've leaned less, specific with like, Merchant Scroll, and more general with like the Steel Enchantment, the Mirror Maid, the Copy Enchantment. Um, was there kind of like a pivotal moment that
Sorry.
you had where you're like, if I'm not drawing cards, I'm dead? Or was it more on the interaction suite where you're like, every time I cast like a Psych Rift, there's really only one piece or one or two pieces that I'm casting it for? Because I'm sure you weren't on like, Hercule's like meditation or like something like that. You're,
Yeah.
you're right.
So the thing with Cycrift and March of Swirling Mist is, I mean, they're obviously good in Mono Blue because those are the best kind of wipes that you get access to. I've tried a few others, but overall, I was just so I switched from a control list into a layered combo list, and that's when the change happened. And I was so happy with the change that I just kept it in this mid-range build because like usually I don't really need to wipe the whole board. I'd rather just bounce the hate piece that's stopping me from winning,
Hmm.
or bounce that one combo piece and leave the rest up for my opponents to interact with. I'm not I don't see myself keeping up 7 mana to have an end step Cyclonic Rift.
Hmm.
I don't see myself ditching 4 cards too much of Swirling Mist to phase out some creatures.
Hmm.
Um, I'd rather just have Retraction Helix and Banishing Necks Banishing Neck as spot removal to get rid of whatever Null Rod, Curse Totem, maybe Breach, Necro, or like Draneth. Then to be able to like overload the Rift and wipe the whole board. Obviously, there are some situations sometimes where I have like a huge board, but I can't win, and because the board is so cluttered, everyone can present wins at instant speed. I'd love to like just jam a Cyclonic Rift, force everyone to try to win, and then win on top of that. Sure, those situations happen, but the change from switching to those switching from those board wipes to those specific cards that allow me to interact with one piece, but also are combo pieces and pull way less hate. It has just been working really great. And it also leads to a situation where I can't even be forced into policing the table because I just don't have the things to police the table. So it is a bit greedy, but it's paying off.
Yeah, that makes sense. Where it's the uh, and so you're a content creator, so I'm sure you've run into like a lot of
Yeah.
situations, you know, where you'll see in a video where like you can't really overload a psych rift, and then immediately like win after those situations. While they happen in cEDH, they don't happen like a ton, and people say, well, actually, you know, I had a friend who that happened to like just a week ago. And
Yeah.
you're like, sure, sure, but I feel like what's way more likely to happen is you're stuck in counterspell hell, and you have to win
Mhm.
right here, right now. And
Yeah.
sure, like an overloaded Psycho Rift might be nice, but from my experience, you know, your experience playing Urza, every time I looked at that Psycho Rift, I was like, God, if this were Retraction Helix, it'd be over, dude.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Most likely, I get a Psych Rift, and I look at it, and I cast it. Even if I overload it, I draw out a ton of interaction because nobody wants that one-sided board wipe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then translating that into win is kind of hard in Mono Blue
Mm-hmm.
because right, you don't have these unconditional tutors. But if I have Retraction Helix and have a Battered Golem in play, I'm just winning. I
Mm-hmm.
just need to time it right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I'll just keep it in my hand, and then if the right time arises, I'll just try to combo off at instant speed.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that Cyclonic Rift doesn't allow you to do. So the main idea behind this is just why play it controlly when I can just pressure another win attempt?
Mm-hmm.
Not meaning that I'm like turbo going for that win attempt, but it gives me the option to do so, and it's just been working out so well.
Mm-hmm.
Much better than the control playstyle has ever done, has ever. So it also like what I mentioned before. People go like, yeah, we need a board wipe. Can you like tutor for a Cycrift? So first of all, I don't have the tutors to tutor for a Cycrift, and
Mm-hmm.
second of all, I don't have Cycrift. So I can't be pressured into that situation. I won't also pressure
Mm-hmm.
myself into that situation. Um, I would say board wipes are necessary, especially in this meta against the Rhystic Hell and the Rock Thrust decks. Um, but Psych Rift is probably not the one I'd recommend first. I like
Mm-hmm.
Culling Ritual. I think that's
Oh
a
yeah.
crazy good card in this meta. I also think Toxic Deluge is a good thing to play, but I don't have access to those cards. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
I feel
tough
like
luck.
if you could be on Toxic Deluge, you probably would be.
Yeah, most likely. Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Because it's
you'd also
like,
probably be
it's
on
really good.
Demonitor
I
and
pay
MC.
3 life into it and wipe most of the board and keep Urza. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Something I would love to keep this conversation about, you know, is do I want to be stopping other people's win attempts or do I want to be making my own as we move to the artifact section? Because I think Urza oftentimes can have this reputation of being a very stacksy list. You know, someone shuffles up an Urza and across the table, I'm like, boys, get ready for a winter moon. You know,
Yeah.
I see you, and I'm trying to generate threat. I'm gonna say, you know, do you guys know what storage matrix does? Because if you don't, you're about to learn.
Yeah, that's like
And there's
2022 tech.
a lot of artifact stacks, and I'm sure that there's a lot of artifact stacks players amongst the Urza community. But you've said that you've kind of leaned more towards this kind of like combo, not quite
Mhm.
turbo, but you know, why put something that counters an underworld breach in the deck when you can just put something that can win on top of an underworld breach in the list?
Yeah,
So I would
basically.
love to hear more about not just the artifact package that you have right now, but
Mhm.
also how it's kind of changed over the last. Let's try to keep it truncated to like a year or two.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
because I think that I'm sure we could both talk till we're mono blue in the face about all the different artifacts that Urza could run. But I'd love to hear how you ended up with the artifact package that you have right here, right now, and specifically why I think there's Grafdigger's Cage is really the only stacks piece I know. Codex Shredder
I like
kind of
Tormod's Crypt,
is Tormod's Crop. It's more interaction than stacks, I would say.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
talk to me about your artifact package, dude.
Okay, so as I mentioned before, Urza used to have these control pieces like Winter Orb, Static Orb, um, then later maybe Winter Moon, Back to Basics, Trinisphere, stuff like that, right? But that was way before cEDH tournaments really became a thing, and then also like before we had like stricter time limits, right? And what I just noticed that it's just not working out. There's this what I would call that cap where people were like, yeah, you just have to play faster, you just have to force your opponents to play faster, but it just doesn't work like that, in my opinion,
No,
and in my experience. So
no.
you
If
can
you're
you
walking
can
into a
only push
tournament and you're
people
like,
so
just
far
play
without
fast,
being rude, right? Um, so I just decided. Then there was the printing of Forensic Edge here, which has incredible combo potential in Urza. So I decided to go into this layered combo approach and just cut all the stacks pieces, Winter Orb, Static Orb, Trinisphere, Back to Basics, everything, just threw it out and played more combo pieces. The only cards that I've kept in the deck that could be considered stacks pieces are Grafdigger's Cage, because it's just such a good card in Urza. Basically, an absolutely asymmetrical stacks piece. There's just very, very few situations where it stops you from doing stuff. I've kept so with Grafdigger's Cage, it stops all breach lines. It stops Kinnan from going off. It stops Rock Thrasios from tutoring up their value pieces with like Neoform and stuff like that, right? So it's just such an overall good card that I have to play it. I played a while without it and I missed it so much because it's just so good, right? That's also one of the reasons why I cut Reality Chip, because that nombos with Grafdigger's Cage. But yeah, that's another story. So then I kept Tormod's Crypt. Tormod's Crypt is basically a zero drop that you can just keep open and have Graveyard Hate available at any time, which is really neat. And then I have Codex Shredder, which again, it's not really a stacks piece. It's mostly, yeah, kind of a combo value whatever piece support card, because it allows me to perform spell loops, and it allows me to have like at least some kind of recursion in the deck. I've won games with Codex Shredder just by getting my combo pieces back or getting interaction back at instant speed because I have so much mana. But also Codex Shredder hates on top deck tutors. And the issue with that is you don't see the value it provides because people don't play top deck tutors into an open Codex Shredder.
Yeah.
So you don't immediately be like you can't say like, okay, I stopped 3 top deck tutors, because people don't play the top deck tutors when there's Codex Shredder.
Yeah,
But yeah,
people wouldn't
how did
like
the
rapid
counters
ban as
how
a
did the
stacks piece.
artifacts change? The biggest factor was probably the banning of Dockside Extortionist. That card was the bane of my existence in Urza, because it would like I would feed that card like crazy, because that's what the deck does. If I don't feed that card, there's no point of me playing Urza, right? The deck lives of playing to the board, playing a lot of artifacts to the board. That's what it does. So banning Dockside really allowed me to push back into those huge board states, have also those zero drops like Jeweled Amulet. I'm also personally on Welding Jar, which is not in the primal list, but it's in my personal list. Having those Ever-Flowing Chalice and all the other like zero drops and one drops that just provide so much value in Urza, because they are basically Mock Sapphire, right? Then I have, of course, the One Ring and Unwinding Clock, which is a crazy strong engine. And then I have the Manifold Key, Voltaic Key, which provides so much value, not just to untap Basalt and Grim, but obviously also the One Ring. I can really storm off. I've been in games where I like activate Tor for 1. So Tor is the One Ring. And then on my next turn rotation, get it up to activating it for 9, right? So just storming off, which is something you wouldn't expect a mono blue deck to do, but it works out. And then I have Rings of Brightheart, which is a very low card quality card, even in Urza, I have to admit that, but it has really nice synergies. It allows me to double activate the One Ring. It allows me to double tutor with Tezzeret. It allows me to double protect my stuff with Welding Jar. It allows me to double flip with Urza if I need to. It allows me to double fetch, and it allows me to perform spell loops with Codex Shredder because I can double recur. And it also allows me to go off with Basalt Monolith without being in a storm combo, so I can just win through any kind of heuristic studies, right?
Yeah, because you're not casting it.
Which is really neat. Also, it's a very easily tutorable combo because both pieces are artifacts, which is really good in this deck. Yeah, I think that's basically it. The rest is just general basic artifacts that are very obvious in what they do. I decided to cut some other stuff. I decided to cut Repurposing Bay again because I want less tutors, more general value Katra engines. So, because I will eventually find my pieces. I've never had the issue of like not being able to find my pieces. That it's also, again, it's just working out better than I was expecting it to. So that's fine.
Yeah, I think that's one of the really nice things about combo density is that like it's relatively easy to just draw 5 cards and then just kind of get there. Or you're in a position where you have the ability to get to the point where you then have like win a board.
Yeah.
Man, this deck must have been so different before the One Ring.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Also much worse. Yeah.
We
Yeah.
talked about the
For
enchantments a
years
little
we've been struggling with card advantage, and
Yeah.
I've finally come to a point where I could say like, if I have a decent mulligan, I will not struggle with card advantage. At least not. It doesn't have to be card advantage, but like keeping a relatively full grip throughout the game.
That's awesome. That can be a huge problem for a lot of lists, and I think is like one of the number one things that can prevent kind of fringe stuff or if we want to think of like the big 3 or the big 5. They can make it really, really hard. For instance, like for an Oswald Fiddlebender to like break into the meta is sure you can have like all these great combos, but at the end of the day, you've got to get cards in hand somehow.
Yeah.
And the fact that you are already so incentivized to do so much like artifact stuff, the One Ring has got to be like the biggest layup. Is there anything in the lands package that you think deserves a lot of attention? I recognize Ipnu Rivulet from my Oswald days. So that's probably another way to kind of draw people out. I'm assuming that this is probably in for like a fringe of a fringe potential win line that you've maybe done once or twice, or do you have it as another kind of like essentially just like top deck tutor hate?
Which one exactly was it?
We're looking at Ipnu Rivulet.
Ipnu Rivulet. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I missed that. So what happened?
I heard the closing down sound, but I don't know
Yeah.
what happened.
What closed down? I think your stream.
Jump cut. Okay. Talk to me about Ipnu Rivulet. Why is this in here? Why are you on a desert land?
Okay, so we used to play almost like 15 basic lands because we were on back to basics. But after cutting back to basics, I decided to cut back on the basic lands as much as possible and replace those basic lands with blue lands that don't enter tapped. Why is that? Because Carpet of Flowers. That's basically all that is to say about it. I cut back as many basic islands as possible and added blue lands that don't enter tapped. That's Cephalid Colosseum, Otawara, Minamo, what's the other one? Oboro, Palace in the Clouds, and also Ipnu Rivulet, and even Tularia, right? Which is just basically just a meme, but also such a flavor win. But the card just makes blue mana without basically any downside. I have my fetch lands and I have my basic lands, and it works out really well. I've never had the issue of having a fetch land that doesn't get an island. And even if I ever run into that issue, that also means that I have 5 islands in play or 6. So that's okay. That never happened. Ipnu Rivulet is just one of those lands that produce blue mana without basically any downside. Losing life is basically irrelevant in mono blue. Nobody attacks you really unless you have One Ring in play. And having the ability to mill cards, that's also come up. I've milled top deck tutors if I had to. That's not the main idea behind the card, but it's something that it does. Yeah, that's basically it. The other cards in the land package are just fast mana. So Ancient Tomb, City of Traders, and one of my favorites, Crystal Vein, which I think is criminally underplayed. Really good card in my opinion. And then there's Talon Gates, which in my opinion I kind of view it as a kind of channel land, right? Like you would do like Otawara and Boseiju. Other than that, I think I have Fomori Vault, which I really like because I play so heavily to the board that sometimes I just have like 20 artifacts in play, right? So with a single Fomori Vault activation, I can look through almost like a third of my deck sometimes, right?
That is so cool.
Depending how deep we are in the game, and just get the piece that I need. Also, you don't lose the pieces; they just go under your library. Nothing goes to the graveyard, so the card has been working really well. I cut Inventor's Fair for it because, again, Inventor's Fair is a tutor that you can use one time. You get one specific piece, but Fomori Vault is just more like a quote-unquote value engine on a land. And playing so heavily to the board, having so many artifacts in play most of the time, it just allows me to dig very deep into my deck. And I think that should be it with like the utility lands. Yeah, that's basically it.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, and so that's kind of like the open and shut Urza's Power Scepter. And there is, one short addendum that we want to talk about. In addition to the Power Scepter list, you also have the Polykraken list. And people may look at it based off the views and they'll say, oh, it's more popular, surely it's better. Or they'll look and they'll see, the Hullbreaker and the Tide Spout, and they're like, oh, it's so simple. You just have to polymorph, or Proteus Staff, and then you just win. How hard could it be? Anyone who is doing anything other than getting a Tide Spout out as quickly as possible is just coping. What would you say to that person?
I mean, yeah, the thing with Polykraken or like the polymorph list is it used to be the better list because the Power Scepter list was lacking combo potential and card draw engines, and the polymorph list could compensate that with being able to combo off more consistently. Because you need one artifact tutor, you get Proteus Staff. You need one sorcery tutor like Mystical tutor, you get polymorph, and then you just try to get a win through with enough interaction. And obviously that works. That is a valid strategy. But the Power Scepter version has gotten so many upgrades over the last few years that it has just completely outclassed the polymorph list. Not that it's not viable anymore, but you're just missing out on so many good cards by not playing other creatures because of the polymorph package. Those include my favorite card, Phyrexian Metamorph, but obviously Forensic Gadgeteer, which is such a crazy engine in Urza. It's basically Bergi and Joyra in one card, depending on what you just need. You got Battered Golem, which is so good, and it's become even better with everyone playing Smothering Tithe. It just makes so much mana. Mockingbird has been performing incredibly well, even if you just use it to clone a Dork. But like having an Esper, having a Ragavan, copying my own Battered Golem, copying my own Forensic Gadgeteer, it just provides so much value. Yeah, the downsides of playing no other creatures are just too big in 2025 than the upside of having access to a very compact combo package, because we also have those compact combo package in the Power Scepter version now. That being said, I still like the polymorph version because I think it's like a neat, very straightforward game plan, and I know that a lot of people are still on it, and I'm not planning on retiring that list anytime soon. But for me personally, I've been not playing it actively for quite some while now, because just Power Scepter provides so much more versatility, so many more options you got in like how to brew the deck and how to play the deck. Yeah,
Yeah, it
that's
makes
basically
sense.
it.
You know, maybe once upon a time, if it was Polykraken or like stacks, then there's going to be far more like dialogue and debate between which one's like more viable.
Yeah,
You know, but now you're not cutting Winter Moon or Stasis Orb. You know, you're cutting, you know, just like you said, for Forensic Edgeteer, as I think something that's come out a lot during the conversation, and Batter Golem as well. Just those two cards alone open up just this whole plethora of win lines, especially that
yeah,
don't play into like Rhystic Study. You know, not every loop you're doing with Tidespout is going to be mana positive.
yeah,
And so it avoids putting you in these situations where, oh, you know, I'm going to win probably, you know, into like I'm gonna
yeah.
win definitely, and on top of your win, because I think
See,
they
like
cost a great deal in Flash sale.
Hullbreaker Horror is such a good card that we can just still play it in Power Scepter, right?
Mm-hmm.
For 7 mana, that's very reasonable for us to like cast and win. That's the difference between like a Hullbreaker Horror and a Cyclonic Rift. Cyclonic Rift is super disruptive, obviously, right? But it just doesn't immediately translate into a win. If I get my Hullbreaker Horror out, more I'm like very likely to win that game, because first of all it's uncounterable, and then second of all it just protects itself, right? So that card is just so good. You can just put it into a Power Scepter list and it'd still be good, right? You
Mm-hmm.
don't need to have that polymorph package.
Super duper interesting. I love to get to hear your thoughts on both of your lists. And then if you have some time, I think that kind of watching through some of your videos as well as getting to listen to you talk, kind of had some other questions for me. One that is kind of at the forefront of my mind is a little bit ago you released a video talking about what you perceived as the 5 main archetypes of cEDH. And at the time that include Turbo, Stacks,
Mm-hmm.
Farm, as well as Protean Hulk, and
Mm-hmm.
Flash. You know, one of those. Oh, what's up, old guy? One of those has since been banned. You know, we no longer have Flash. And
Yeah.
then I feel like while Protean Hulk is still around, it's roughly as viable as like Stacks, where it's definitely something you
Yeah.
can do. But if I'm up against a farm list, a Hulk list, and a Stacks list, there's only one that I'm like genuinely concerned about. What if you had to in 2025, September 1st, say this is Eisenherz updated 5 main archetypes of cEDH? What would you say they are?
I mean, we obviously still have those dedicated turbo lists,
Mm-hmm.
um, which would probably be like Roxai and what we used to have like with Dark Rock.
Mm-hmm.
So Turbo's still a thing, and then now, of course, there's Dihada, and I've seen Timna Rock again,
Mm-hmm.
which are like these all-in Turbo deck lists. Then we have Farm, of course, which is undeniably the best thing to play. The Top Deck Invitationals proved that again. Then I would say we have those very mid-rangey creature-based decks. I would put maybe Kinnan and Rock Thrasios in that category,
Mm-hmm.
because like they can translate very few spells into like incredibly huge board states and mana advantage that
Mm-hmm.
don't feed into the Rhystic studies, which I think is just so unique and powerful, being able to generate value without casting a ton of spells just by having a lot of activated abilities.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically it. I think I wouldn't like Control is super dead, Stacks is dead.
Yeah.
It's just not viable at all anymore. Nobody's playing I mean, a few people are still playing those fringe things like something like Poly or like Protean Hulk, but it's not something that you would typically see a lot of.
Uh,
It's not meta defining.
do you think that you would
Most of the
say?
things I see are like very, very, very value engine centric. So you put like your engines into play, you wait 1 to 2 turn cycles and have like an incredible board state with tons of mana, tons of cards in hand, and then at that point it basically becomes like a sandbox where everyone can do everything. Everyone has like an omniscience and an enter the infinite
Oh yeah,
resolved, and then it
man.
just comes down to who sandbags the best and who makes the best decisions on the stack. And the other decks would be like those that generate incredible value without casting a lot of spells. I would maybe even put Magda in that category because again, it's one of those decks you don't cast a lot of spells. Most of the things you do happen by having triggers and activate abilities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we've got Turbo, which is still very much alive and well. Farm,
Yeah.
which is like better than ever. I guess
Yeah.
kind of what we consider like Cradle decks. I know that, or kind of like big mana. I know that with Enduring Vitality, Cradle isn't as necessarily quintessential to the Kinning game plan as it once was.
Yeah.
But they're still kind of operating on this axis of just make as much money as you can, trigger raise the study as little as possible. We do kind of have now this kind of like Freedom Waffles, essentially like no back cards, which is just a farm version of Kinnan almost. I know that we also, I think, have kind of seen the rise of like parasitic decks. Would you consider that kind of like an archetype of itself? Because I know Magda can kind of fall into that. Sissy, I think, can also kind of fall into that.
Funnily, the parasitic deck video I made quite a while ago is, I think, my most viewed video for some reason, but I think it was viewed by a lot of like casual players because I think some of them like misunderstood what I was talking about. But that's fine for me, right? I got I got my views. I think it's just a reality of our multiplayer free for all that parasitic decks are just part of the meta. I don't think they work as well as they used to because people are way more aware of them, and they just don't do the things that other decks are so good at doing, like winning at instant speed and stuff, and like generating crazy board states. I mean, back in the day, I used Gitrock as an example. Today, I would probably use Tayam. It is an archetype. It exists, but I think it exists because of the reality of how like multiplayer free for all interacts and decks interact with each other. I always when I think about parasitic decks, I have like this picture in my mind of like WWE three-way matches where like three people fight each other, right? And then it just becomes like someone gets thrown out of the ring, and then two people fight each other, and then in the last second, that person that was thrown out of the ring comes back and like submission moves someone that was just about to win, something like that, right? So I wouldn't say necessarily that I like the archetype, and I wouldn't say that it's super strong right now, but it is a reality. There are parasitic deck types in the meta, and you need to be aware of that, and you need to know how to handle that. So we've talked about that again with some friends just a few days ago. I try to be vocal about the thoughts I have before a game and during a game. I don't yap a lot. I don't talk over people, but I still try to like communicate my thoughts because I think I'm able to prime the thought processes my opponents have. So if I sit down on table and I notice that people think that I'm playing a stacks list, I just immediately tell them, "You guys, I'm not playing stacks list, right? This is a mid-range list, just so you know." So that they are not afraid of like static orb and stuff. And if I see a Tayam deck in the pot, I will vocalize that this is a parasitic deck. It will feed off us interacting with each other. So we need to keep that deck in check, and we can't let it cook. We can't allow it to develop its board undisturbed. We can't allow it to have like Tayam in play. Don't get fooled by it revealing the hands in their the cards in their hand and stuff like that. So I talk about that because if I don't, we will be in a situation where three people fight each other, and the parasitic deck just profits off of that. And yeah, I think that's important to deal with the parasitic decks. But yeah, we do have them in the meta. That's just the reality of like multiplayer free for all.
Yeah. You described it in the video as the parasitic deck is the natural conclusion of a meta that has a strong identity. Because then if you have this, a strong enough stream, or if we want to, think of like a highway and it's just packed with cars, Kinnan, Broadgrass, Blue Farm, everywhere. The parasitic deck is the one that's looking to like take an exit and then also just get right back on the on ramp.
Yeah.
And everyone's still going in the same direction, but they're looking to just take a little bit of a different route, and then
Yeah.
hoping to skip the big counterspell war or things like that. And some people may hear the name like parasitic and think like, oh, it's a drain on the cEDH meta. We
Yeah.
need to get rid of them at all costs.
Yeah, that's not what I meant. No.
Yeah, and I don't think that's I think I've played a lot of decks that I would consider like relatively like parasitic. And it's essentially, I think it's something you mentioned in the video that we see it in a lot of like mono green or kind of Golgari plus list. They're essentially like oftentimes turbo decks with just an extremely high level of like redundancy, where they will
Yeah.
just throw caution to the wind turn 1, turn 2, and then they're comfortable doing basically nothing for like 1 or 2
Yeah.
turns, and then sweeping in at the end. And it's
Yeah.
definitely viable. There's commanders that I think are kind of meant to be played that way. But also, since it kind of has to exist in opposition to the meta, it both is going to kind of always be around. But if there's a point where being parasitic becomes the main thing, then like there will be an inversion of what a parasitic deck becomes. I would be really, really interested in hearing. Something you didn't mention as being viable in the format right now is stacks. And you have been around in cEDH much, much longer than I have. But even in my relatively short tenure, I've seen people try to play stacks, and Balin will get spoiled or something like that, and everyone will be like, oh, stacks is back, baby, and it's better than ever. And then they go 0-2 at a tournament, and then everyone hates them, and
Yeah.
they're like, okay, I'm just gonna go put Rockside back together. Do you think there is a world where stacks comes back in a big way? And if that world exists, what has to happen for us to get there?
Honestly, I don't think that stacks will ever come back into cEDH, especially into cEDH in tournaments, because of tournament logistics. Games have to end sometime. Games have to find a conclusion, be it a draw or have a winner. Tournaments have to end because the venue has to be closed, right? So being able to draw out a game will not translate into a win because just the game just has to end at some point, and then you will most likely just play for the draw. It happened to me. I've done that. I've been there. The what we need is, so first of all, we need more time for the games. So at least like 2 hours for stack. The stacks would also need very, very easy access to combos. So what's the worst thing that happens is you stacks out the board. Maybe not the worst thing, but one of the things that happens is you stacks out the board. Nobody's able to present a win. So ideally you have like some kind of lock on everyone, but also you're not able to present a win. And then you just draw, go. It just goes draw, go, draw, go, draw, go. And if your opponents are smart, they will be able to run down the clock on you, and then it's a draw. So what you need is you need to be able to stacks out the board, and then you need to be able to translate a stacked board state into a combo win. The issue with that is you are never really able to stacks out the board completely because the meta is diverse enough that there is like no generic stacks piece that hits everyone equally. More often than not, the stacks pieces you put into play shut off 1 or 2 other players, and the third player just profits off the game actions you've been taking. So let me give you an example. I put a Trinisphere into play, right? I'm stopping Roxai, and I'm also very much hurting TNK, but like Kinnan is just thriving under a Trinisphere. It doesn't care at all, right? So I'm not able to stop that. Other example, I put a Grafdigger's Cage into play, which is a card I personally play, right? I'm able to stop Kinnan, I'm able to stop Roxai from going for Breach, or TNK going for Breach. But like Marneos is just, oh yeah, thanks, I'll just draw a ton of cards and just win there. There is like these, what we used to do, like create those locks on board states. It's just not possible as easy as it maybe was a few years ago, because the meta is too diverse and the options that the decks have to pivot into allow them to just go under the stacks pieces. Obviously, there are some good control pieces. There's Draneth, and then there's the Grafdigger's Cage, and then I don't know, there's Oppo, which is a nice control piece. Like all of these work, but all of these work not in dedicated stacks shells. The cards are used in other ways. Oppo is used to steal tutors. Draneth can be used in farm decks to attack and draw cards with Tymna, right? So the dedicated stacks lists, in my opinion, they will most likely not make a comeback because of logistics and because of how diverse our meta is.
So something, and then I think that this may be a good, last question because we're in very different time zones, and I really want to respect your time. So we talked about how once upon a time there were way more archetypes than we have now, and the archetypes that we have are kind of like condensed and collated. But part of the reason Stacks isn't viable is even though the archetypes have kind of condensed, the avenues for winning have multiplied. And so even though Thassa's Underworld Breach are still chef's kiss, some of the best of the best you can be doing, the ways to get there are more there's more routes to them than ever. So I know something that gets talked about a lot, especially in the content creator space, is the health of the format. So kind of starting around this paradigm of things simultaneously being like less viable, of like the final at the invitational being for blue farm decks, in addition to like the fact that even within those blue farm decks they had very, very different card selections, and the differences that they had were more impactful than ever. How would you gauge the health of cEDH? And then how would you look to see us grow and become a more healthier format?
So for me personally, the banning of Dockside Extortionist really opened up new windows and opportunities for like brewing. I didn't like the fact that for a long time it was basically just who resolves their Dockside and they clone first and just jams a win as early as possible. Obviously, what we now have is like this kind of Rhystic study meta where it's just who gets their Rhystic into play first, who gets their Tithe into play first, draws a ton of cards, makes a ton of treasures. But for me, those games are much more interesting because they allow basically everyone to participate in the game. And it's just not just like who puts their puzzle together first and just wins turn 2 and then that's over. I do think, however, that Rhystic Study is an absolutely broken card, and it might be better for the format if the card would not be legal. Obviously, another engine would take its place. People would go for Fish, but Fish is just not nearly as powerful as Rhystic Study. I do, however, think the meta is in a really good place. If you go to EDH top 16, you'll see that there are a lot of decks being played. Even like B tier decks like Urza is seeing decent amount of play. The decks that are being played are not all like all the same. There are different kinds of Kinnan lists. There are different kinds of TNK lists. The card choices like differ, and they make a difference. It's not just like, okay, I changed 5 cards and it's still basically the same deck. Sure, it's very similar, but the changes actually do matter. If you're playing a very mid-range grindy TNK, or are you like playing a more proactive TNK list? Are you playing Rocksai, or are you playing Dark Rock, or are you playing Wrongsai? It makes a difference in how the deck plays, how it performs. So I do think the meta is in a good place. What I would like to see is like in the tournaments, I would like to see more, I don't know how to say it properly, more like the social aspect of the game is important for me, right? Sorry. So competitiveness is one thing. Of course, we play cEDH because we want to win, and we are competitive, and we want to play our best game. But I feel like a lot of times people forget that, again, at the end of the day, we are playing a game, and we should be enjoying that game. So I would like for people to be less in their head, right? Play more what they enjoy, and then while they're playing, treat each other with respect, treat the event with respect. I'm specifically talking about like stuff like toxicity. cheating or stuff like I don't want to say cheating in general. It's like cheating, but like sorry, being like taking game actions that are like on the edge of cheating, right? Like borderline. Um, so that's one thing. I don't think the format needs a lot of regulation when it comes to the card pool, because I think what we're doing right now is fine, except for maybe the heuristic studies and maybe the flash enablers. Those are cards that could be talked about. But I think what's much more important for our community to grow and prosper is that we need to get back to this mindset of that we are playing a game and the game should be enjoyable for everyone that sits on the table. And if we can manage to do that, we can grow faster as a community because it becomes a much more inviting place for other people. It also allows like for new ideas to come in from other perspectives, and it just makes everything much more, I want to say, relaxed and enjoyable for everyone. So my wish for the cEDH community would be to like, I don't know how to say it in other words, like just everyone just chill down a bit and be like friendly to each other, like just be good, right? Talk respectfully, don't yap, allow your opponents to talk, listen to them, be respectful, don't trade your personal integrity for a win.
Yeah.
Understand that we're playing a game. Even at the highest stakes, we're still playing a game.
Something that reminds me of is in your video about cheating, you talked about how a couple different criteria needs to be met. So like two of three things have to take place. But one of the things is that like if you notice a mistake and then don't say anything about it. Something that was really, really formative in my early tournament experience was I actually like lost to a Rogside player. And me and the other people had started kind of like scooping up our decks. And then the guy who had just won, he just got his ticket to top 4. He said, guys, stop. Actually, I think I made a mistake. I had a Root Maze out, which means lands enter tapped. And he had played a Phyrexian Arena that he then sacrificed to his Rograk to cast the Ad Naz and then go off from there. And even though he had been paying attention to the Root Maze post Ad Naz, he and like the three of us, we had already agreed to like go grab dinner afterwards, but he had such a high regard for the integrity of his own level of play that he then like called a judge over. We re-round. He lost, and then that was it. But I remember thinking about the fact that even after he had like won the game, he still prioritized and valued being the best possible player that he could be to take a top 4 seat off the table and revisit that space. And I am very, very grateful to have had that experience early on in my cEDH career, because I think it was very, very impactful for me.
Yeah, so much respect for that person, because like again they value their personal integrity and their skill as a player higher than the placing itself. And that for me, that's a respectable player. That's someone I could eventually like look up to, right, as a player. But if I see like someone who's like performing incredibly well and just doing things that I personally would like not condone, I'd probably say like, yeah, you might be successful at the game, but the things you do to be successful at the game, they are hurting the community, and I'd much rather have a healthy community or like be part of a healthy community and a healthy scene than have the best performing. I don't know, be the best perform. You're not even the best performing. Like have the best elo, whatever, right?
Or the you know the image of being super duper high performing. Yeah,
exactly.
And to you know, complicate the story even further, you know, I won the game, then immediately lost in top 4 to a player who somewhat infamously got caught cheating on camera like 5 days later. And so for me, that generated in those 5 days, I had this almost huge existential crisis of I got destroyed, in top
Yeah.
four, and I was almost obsessed with the thought of like, I thought I had what it takes to be like a good player,
Yeah.
but it feels like I'm never going to be able to perform at the level that this other player is. And then it turns out that the reason they were performing at that level was because of cheating. And it's one of those things where it's uh, I think cheating is a very complicated subject, and we're still very much in this kind of developmental stage
Mhm.
as a community of what do we want to do. I know that you, I think, have had some really good content and some really well formulated thoughts about um, how you think that the cEDH community should interact with cheaters. I think that something that's important to me that I try to keep in mind, though, is I think one of the biggest consequences of cheating is that it takes power away from the people in that pod of what could I have done better, because I think one of the best places to be as a cEDH player is I want to be the best possible version of Eric that I can be. I want to be the best
Yeah.
pilot of this deck, and then just meeting with a coach, going over footage, and say I could have tutored this differently. I could have cast this at a different time. And what cheating does is it takes the potential for personal growth off the table, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what I do. If you're going to like riffle shuffle and make sure that you always put the run ring on top after you fetch turn one,
Yeah.
there's no improvement I can make that competes with that inside of legal game actions. And I think that's an
Yeah.
area where like a lot of players may not have played against cheaters, but they have run up into these spaces where they feel like there's nothing that they can do to improve and get better at the game. And I think that we, as a cEDH community, need to protect that space of there's always things that you can do to improve. There's always ways to take that next step as a player. And one of those is just making sure we have a healthier, more robust community, where we encourage one another. And like you said, as those little pockets of like, for instance, I think Salt City was like a big like that was like a clarion call to people not even in our format of like maybe maybe we need to put a time cap on things.
Yeah.
But in
I
response to that, then the
sorry.
vitriol online of people like harassing or essentially like cyberbullying like people in the community. I think that there's a lot of ways that we're still very much working out some rough patches, and I think the future is bright, but I think that we do need to make sure that we are doing a good job of keeping our finger on the pulse of like what the real problems are and responding
Yeah.
to them with a measured and appropriate response.
Yeah. It's just so I've been I've been putting a lot of time and effort in my personal free time into this community, right? Um, and on so many fronts, trying to help other players, help projects, be involved, right, in any kind of way. And whenever I see someone cheat or like treat another person in a bad way, I feel like it is damaging the work and effort I've been putting into all of this.
Hmm.
And I might not be the best player, and I might not be the most involved, and I might not be the best content creator, but I'm doing what I can to further this community because I like being involved,
Hmm.
and I'd love for other players to and other people in this community to like maybe view it in the same way and not be like so in their heads about just winning, 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 winning over everything. If winning means that you damage the community by cheating or by treating people badly, then you're, in my opinion, you're doing it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, just maybe take this away. You can be a nice person and still be a successful player, and you can also you can play an off meta deck and still be successful with it. You don't have to play blue farm if you don't want to. I play Urza, and I've done really well with it. I've done well in this August league. Yeah, it's September now. I've done well in the August league. I've done this year. I've had an incredible run, and I'm so happy just playing my B tier deck and helping others, coaching others. Um, yeah, let's everyone just bring some positivity and not be in our heads about winning too much.
Heck yeah.
That will come eventually.
In addition to trying to be the best versions of ourselves, you mentioned that you do a lot to contribute to the community. Kind of as a as a closing statement, what are some things? I know that we had a QR code earlier up on the screen. I'll go ahead and jump back to that, just so that people can scan it if they like. What are some things you've got either in the works or that you have done that you would like to use this opportunity to say, like, go check this out, go watch my video on parasitic decks.
Okay. So one thing I'm super proud of, and I'm working on another part, is my cEDH masterclass series. Those are like videos very specifically for players at a high level, that like focus on very specific gameplay situations, but also on like how to overcome issues in like tournaments. I do cEDH deck techs. I work with Freedom Waffle for his Learn cEDH website. I've been involved. Well, back in the day, I used to be involved in the cEDH decklist database. I used to be part of the competitive Commander Collective, which I had to, because of personal reasons, had to like stop being an active part of for this moment. I work with a lot of other content creators as much as I can, because I like this community aspect of it, right? We're playing a social format. Yeah, if you want to check out what I'm doing, come to my Discord server, check out my YouTube channel, check out my Twitter. Yeah, I try to do a lot if I have the time to. From stuff like basic 1-minute deck tech videos, just to have like this little input on like how does a deck function I faced yesterday, to running some Discord servers and like creating very specific content. And I have to say, I am proud of my content. I was never planning on becoming a content creator. I just did some like 2-hour deck tech for Urza because I was sick of answering the same questions every time, and people liked it so much that I just kept going. And I have this principle, right? I don't produce content to produce content. I produce content when I think there's something I want to talk about that is important for other people. Again, something as simple as a 1-minute deck tech or just a review of a set, but also stuff as specific as how do I react in a situation where I'm presented with the fact that I can be king making in a game, like very, very specific gameplay scenarios. Yeah, so that's the work I'm most proud of. So check out my YouTube channel.
Heck yeah, here, let me go to this one, make sure we aren't in the way of anything. Well, thank you so much for your time, and for, I feel like I take a lot away from this, and I am super excited to get to play more games against you, or see what Urza has in the future. So super appreciate your time, and thank you.